Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step quietly into a long medieval winter night where warmth is fragile. Darkness stretches endlessly and a small life depends on careful hands. Have you ever wondered how mothers kept their babies alive through bitter cold without modern blankets, heaters, or certainty? You find yourself inside a low wooden room where every breath feels visible and every movement is slow and deliberate. The cold is not dramatic but persistent, pressing gently against skin and bone. So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. And if you feel like it, share your location and the time where you are listening from. Now, dim the lights. You sit quietly near the edge of a small hearth, your body wrapped in rough wool that still holds a faint scent of smoke. The air is cool but not unbearable, softened slightly by the steady glow of embers that breathe a gentle orange light into the room. You notice how the warmth does not spread evenly. It gathers in certain places, leaving others untouched. The room feels uneven. You become aware of the silence, broken only by the soft crackle of wood and the occasional shifting of someone nearby. A mother sits not far from you, her posture relaxed yet alert, as if rest and vigilance exist together without conflict. In her arms, a baby sleeps wrapped carefully in layers that seem both simple and intentional. The fabric looks ordinary, but it is not. You lean your attention closer, noticing how the child is bound in narrow strips of linen, each layer placed with quiet precision. The wrapping is firm but not harsh, creating a small cocoon that holds warmth close to the body. A widely accepted understanding of medieval childcare is that swaddling was essential not only for comfort, but also for preserving heat in fragile infants. You can almost feel it. The warmth stays trapped within those layers, held carefully against the baby's skin, protected from the surrounding cold that lingers just beyond reach. The mother adjusts the cloth slightly, her fingers moving slowly as if guided by repetition rather than thought. She has done this before, many times. A faint smell of wool ash and something slightly sweet fills the air, creating a quiet atmosphere that feels both lived in and protective. You notice how the fire is not large or dramatic. It is controlled steady, never allowed to burn too high or too low. Maintaining this balance requires constant attention, and yet it appears almost effortless. It is a quiet skill. In many medieval households, the hearth served as the central source of heat, shaping nearly every aspect of daily life. Its presence was not simply functional but deeply woven into the rhythm of the home. You sense how everything here is arranged around it, including where people sit, sleep, and place the most vulnerable among them. The baby shifts slightly, just a small movement. The mother responds immediately, adjusting her hold, bringing the child closer to her chest, where her own body warmth adds another layer of protection. There is no urgency in her motion, only a steady awareness that never fully fades. You notice the closeness. It feels natural. Sharing body heat was one of the simplest and most reliable ways to keep infants warm during harsh winters. Without insulated walls or consistent heating, warmth often came directly from human contact, passed gently from one body to another through fabric and stillness. The room breathes slowly. You begin to notice how the cold behaves not as a sudden force, but as a quiet presence that seeps into spaces left unattended. Near the door, the air feels sharper, carrying a faint draft that moves almost invisibly across the floor. The mother has positioned herself carefully, not too close to the door, not too far from the fire. Everything is intentional. You watch as she glances toward the cradle nearby, a small wooden frame lined with additional cloth and what appears to be a thin layer of fur. The cradle is close enough to the hearth to receive warmth, yet far enough to avoid danger from sparks or excessive heat. It is a delicate balance. Some accounts suggest that families used animal furs as an added insulating layer for infants, especially during colder months. These materials, often repurposed from clothing or bedding, provided an extra barrier against the chill, trapping warmth in ways simple cloth could not. You imagine the texture, soft, slightly coarse, warm. The baby stirs again this time, letting out a faint sound that barely rises above the quiet of the room. The mother leans down, her voice low and steady, offering a few gentle sounds that seem to settle the child almost immediately. The sound is soothing. It carries warmth of its own. You notice how sound becomes part of the environment, not loud or distracting, but consistent and reassuring. The crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of those nearby, the faint whisper of fabric shifting against wood. Together they create a rhythm that feels almost protective. It surrounds you. You remain still, allowing your senses to settle into this space, noticing details that might otherwise pass unnoticed. The floor beneath you is uneven, cool to the touch through your clothing, reminding you how thin the barrier is between comfort and discomfort. The cold is always close. You shift slightly, adjusting your position, and feel how even small movements change your experience of warmth. The closer you are to the hearth, the softer the air feels. A little farther away and the chill returns subtle but persistent. It never fully leaves. Some scholars question how effective these methods truly were, especially during the harshest winters when temperatures could drop significantly. There is ongoing discussion about whether these practices were sufficient or simply the best available under difficult conditions. You consider that quietly. Not everything was certain. Yet here in this moment you sense a system that has been shaped by necessity, refined through experience and carried forward through generations. Each action, each placement, each layer of fabric reflects a quiet understanding of how to hold on to warmth in a world where it could easily slip away. The mother shifts her position again, settling more comfortably as the baby remains still against her. The fire continues its steady glow, neither growing nor fading, too quickly maintained, with a patience that feels almost instinctive. Time moves slowly. You begin to feel the rhythm of the night, not measured in hours, but in small adjustments, quiet observations and gentle responses to the needs of the moment. There is no rush here, only continuity, a steady unfolding of care that stretches into the darkness. The warmth holds, for now, and as you sit within this quiet space, you start to understand how survival in winter was not built on a single solution, but on many small, careful choices, repeated again and again until they became second nature. The baby sleeps on, the mother watches, and the night continues calm and unbroken. You remain near the hearth as the night deepens, your awareness settling into the slow rhythm of fire and breath. The room has not changed yet. It feels slightly different now, as if time itself has softened the edges of everything around you. The glow of the embers is lower, quieter, but still steady enough to hold the cold at a respectful distance. The fire needs tending, not urgently, but soon. You notice the mother shift again this time, with a subtle intention that signals a familiar task. She carefully adjusts the baby in her arms, ensuring the layers of cloth remain secure, before leaning forward toward the hearth. Her movements are deliberate practice shaped by repetition rather than hesitation. She reaches for a small piece of wood. It is not large, that would be too much. Instead, she chooses something modest, dry and light, placing it gently among the embers, where it can catch slowly without disrupting the balance of heat. The fire responds with a soft crackle, a faint brightening that spreads outward in a quiet pulse. The warmth grows slightly. You feel it, not as a sudden wave, but as a gradual easing of the cool air that lingers against your skin. The smell shifts as well, deepening with the fresh wood, releasing a faint scent of resin and smoke that blends into the room's already familiar atmosphere. It smells comforting, almost sweet. Maintaining the fire was one of the most essential tasks in any medieval household, especially during winter months, when heat determined not just comfort but survival. A poorly managed fire could mean losing precious warmth, or worse, allowing the cold to settle into the body overnight. The stakes were quiet, but constant. You watch as the mother uses a small iron tool to nudge the embers, drawing them closer together to concentrate their heat. The motion is gentle, almost careful not to disturb the structure she has built over time. There is a kind of patience here that feels deeply rooted. She understands the fire. You begin to notice how the hearth itself is more than just a place for burning wood. It is a carefully maintained system shaped by airflow, fuel and attention. These stones around it hold heat, releasing it slowly into the room long after the flames have softened. The warmth lingers, even when the fire fades. You shift your position slightly, leaning closer without fully committing to the heat, and notice how the air feels thicker here. Warmer, carrying a subtle dryness that contrasts with the cooler edges of the room. It is a small difference, but meaningful. Every inch matters. In some households, people would bank the fire overnight, covering embers with ash to preserve heat until morning. This method allowed them to revive the fire without starting from nothing, saving time and effort during the coldest hours. You imagine the technique: quiet, efficient, necessary. The mother glances toward a small pile of fuel stacked neatly against the wall. Each piece has been chosen and prepared in advance, ensuring it will burn cleanly and steadily. There is no waste here, no careless use of resources. Everything is measured. Even warmth. The baby remains still, breathing softly, the rise and fall barely visible beneath layers of cloth. You notice how the mother occasionally places her hand near the child's face, not touching, just sensing the air as if measuring the temperature without needing to think about it. She is always aware. It does not interrupt her calm. You listen closely and begin to hear the subtle differences in sound that the fire produces. A sharper crack when wood splits, a softer hiss. When moisture escapes, a low murmur as embers settle into themselves. These sounds form a quiet language, one that signals when attention is needed. The fire speaks, in its own way. A commonly observed detail in historical living conditions is that people developed an acute sensitivity to environmental cues, especially those tied to survival. Sound, smell, and slight changes in temperature all carried meaning, guiding action without the need for constant thought. You feel that sensitivity now. It settles into you. The mother leans back once more, drawing the baby closer, her body naturally returning to a position that shares warmth without effort. The fire, now slightly stronger, casts a gentle light that flickers across the walls, revealing textures of wood, fabric, and stone. The shadows move slowly, almost like breathing. You notice how the light never fully reaches the corners of the room, leaving certain spaces in soft darkness. These areas feel cooler, quieter, as if the warmth has chosen not to travel there. The cold waits patiently. It does not rush. You pull your wool covering a little tighter, feeling the coarse texture against your hands, and become more aware of how clothing itself plays a role in maintaining warmth. It is not just the fire, but the layers you carry with you. Warmth is shared between fire fabric and body. There is a moment of stillness where nothing changes, and yet everything continues. The fire burns quietly, the baby sleeps. The mother watches without appearing to watch. The room holds its balance carefully, as if even a small disruption could shift the entire experience. You remain within it, calm and attentive. Some historians question how consistent fire maintenance could be in poorer households where fuel was limited and access to dry wood was uncertain. It remains unclear how families adapted when resources were scarce, especially during prolonged winters. You consider that as softly. Not all nights were equal. Yet here in this space you sense a level of care that goes beyond simple necessity. It is not just about keeping warm, but about preserving a fragile sense of safety within an environment that offers little forgiveness. The mother adjusts the cloth around the baby once more, ensuring no small gap allows cold air to slip inside. Her fingers move with quiet precision, guided by memory and habit. She trusts her hands. They have learned well. The fire settles again into a steady glow, no longer growing, no longer fading, held carefully in a state of quiet balance. You feel its presence not as heat alone, but as a kind of reassurance that fills the space between moments. It is enough, for now, and as you sit there listening to the soft rhythm of burning wood and steady breathing, you begin to understand that keeping a baby warm in winter was not a single action, but a continuous process unfolding gently through the night. Always watched, always maintained, the warmth holds again shaped by patience, attention, and a deep, quiet understanding of how easily it can be lost. You remain within the steady circle of warmth, your attention drifting from the fire to the layers wrapped around the sleeping child. The glow from the hearth continues to flicker gently, brushing across the folds of fabric, revealing their texture in quiet detail. Nothing here feels accidental. Each layer seems chosen, placed and adjusted with care. You begin to notice the wrapping more closely. The outer layer is wool slightly coarse with a faint scent of lanolin that lingers softly in the air. Beneath it, thinner linen lies closer to the baby's skin, smoother, lighter and more breathable. The combination feels deliberate, as if each material serves a specific purpose in holding warmth without overwhelming the body. The layers work together, quietly. You watch as the mother adjusts the edge of the cloth, tucking it gently along the baby's side. Her fingers move slowly, almost absent-mindedly, yet every motion has intention behind it. There is no rushing, no unnecessary movement. Only small corrections made at the right moment. She knows what to look for. You can sense it. A widely accepted detail in medieval domestic life is that linen was commonly used for underlayers due to its softness and ability to absorb moisture, while wool served as the primary insulating fabric. Together they created a system that balanced warmth with comfort, especially important for infants whose bodies could not regulate temperature easily. You imagine the feeling. Soft near the skin, warmer outside. The baby shifts slightly and the cloth responds with a faint rustle, a dry, gentle sound that blends into the quiet atmosphere of the room. The mother pauses, watching for any sign of discomfort, but the child settles again, breathing slow and even. The warmth remains steady. You lean a little closer, noticing how the layers are not loose or flowing, but firm and contained. The wrapping holds the baby's limbs close to the body, reducing exposure to the surrounding air. This tight arrangement seems to create a small protected space where warmth can gather and remain. It feels secure, almost like a cocoon. Swaddling, as it is often described, was more than just a method of keeping infants still. It was believed to support proper development, shaping the body and providing a sense of containment that mirrored the womb. At the same time, it reduced the surface area exposed to cold air, helping preserve body heat during harsh conditions. You consider that quietly. Comfort and survival intertwined. The room carries a faint dryness now, the warmth from the hearth drawing moisture from the air. You notice how the fabrics respond to this, feeling slightly stiffer, yet still pliable enough to move when needed. The textures shift subtly as the environment changes. Everything adapts, even cloth. The mother reaches for another strip of linen resting beside her, running it briefly through her fingers before placing it nearby. It is ready should the need arise, prepared in advance so no sudden movement disturbs the calm of the room. Preparation is constant, even in stillness. You begin to notice how the layering extends beyond the baby. The mother herself wears multiple garments, each adding to her own warmth, which in turn supports the child she holds. Her body becomes part of the system, not separate from it. Warmth flows between them, gently. You shift your hand slightly, brushing against your own covering, and feel how the thickness of the fabric creates a barrier between you and the cold. It is not perfect, but it slows the loss of heat, buying time, preserving comfort. Time matters here, more than you expected. Some lesser-known accounts suggest that certain herbs or dried plant materials were occasionally placed within bedding or cloth layers, not for heat, but for their scent or perceived calming effect. Whether this had any real impact remains uncertain, though. Traces of these practices appear in scattered records. You imagine the scent, subtle, earthy, faintly sweet. The baby's breathing continues slow and steady, the rise and fall barely visible beneath the carefully arranged layers. You notice how the cloth seems to hold not just warmth, but a kind of quiet stillness, limiting movement in a way that feels both protective and restrictive. It is a delicate balance between comfort and control. You glance toward the edges of the room where the light fades into shadow and feel again how the cold lingers there, waiting patient and unmoving. The layers around the baby act as a boundary, keeping that presence at bay. For now, the mother adjusts her position slightly, shifting the baby closer to her chest. The layers compress gently, releasing a faint warmth that spreads outward, almost like a soft pulse through the fabric. You feel it too, subtle, reassuring. A commonly discussed uncertainty among historians is how tightly infants were swaddled across different regions and households. Some suggest variations based on local customs, while others question whether practices change depending on climate or available materials. The details remain unclear, but the intention feels consistent. You remain still, letting your awareness settle into the quiet rhythm of the room. The fire breathes softly. The cloth rests securely. The baby sleeps within its layered shelter, protected from the steady cold that presses gently from all sides. The system holds. For now, you begin to understand that warmth here is not created by a single source, but by many small elements working together. Fabric fire body heat, careful placement, all combined into something that feels both fragile and resilient. Nothing is wasted, nothing is ignored. The mother's hand rests lightly against the outer layer, not pressing, just feeling as if checking the balance without needing to disturb it. Her touch is gentle but certain, guided by experience that has been shaped over many nights like this. She trusts the layers, and they respond. The fire flickers again, casting a soft glow across the cloth, highlighting its folds and edges. You notice how even the smallest crease can change how warmth is held, how air moves, how comfort is maintained. Details matter here, more than words can easily explain, and as you sit quietly within this dim, steady space, you begin to feel how these layers are not just physical coverings, but part of a larger rhythm of care, repeated and refined through time. The baby remains warm. The night continues, and the careful balance holds one quiet layer at a time. You remain where you are, your attention slowly drifting from the layers of cloth toward the small cradle resting nearby. The fire continues its steady glow, and the air carries that familiar mix of warmth and faint chill. Nothing feels rushed. Everything seems placed with quiet intention. The cradle draws your focus. It sits low, made of simple wood, its surface worn smooth by use over many seasons. Inside, you notice additional layers of fabric arranged more loosely than the swaddling around the baby, allowing space while still holding warmth. The lining appears thicker toward the base, as if designed to prevent cold from rising through the wood. The placement matters more than you first expect. The cradle is positioned near the hearth, but not too close. You sense the reasoning immediately. Too near and the heat could become harsh or uneven. Too far and the warmth fades into the surrounding air. The distance chosen feels measured, refined through experience rather than guesswork. It feels precise, quietly deliberate. The mother glances toward it often, even while holding the child. Her awareness seems to extend across the room, as if she is constantly measuring invisible shifts in temperature and air movement. You begin to notice these shifts, two subtle currents that pass through the space. The air is never still, not completely. A broadly accepted understanding of medieval domestic life is that room arrangement played a key role in managing heat, especially in winter months, when every degree of warmth carried significance. Furniture, bedding, and sleeping areas were often placed in relation to the hearth to maximize comfort and safety. You can sense that logic here. It surrounds you. The baby stirs again, and this time the mother gently lowers the child into the cradle. The motion is slow, careful, ensuring that the warmth gathered within the layers is not lost too quickly. As the baby settles, the cloth shifts slightly, releasing a faint trace of retained heat into the cooler air. The change is subtle, but noticeable. You lean your attention closer, observing how the cradle itself seems to hold a lingering warmth, likely absorbed from its position near the fire over time. The wood feels less cold than the floor beneath you, suggesting that even solid materials play a role in preserving heat. Nothing is neutral. Everything participates. The mother adjusts the lining, tucking fabric around the baby's sides, creating a contained space that mirrors the earlier swaddling. The arrangement is not tight but structured, reducing open air while allowing the child to rest comfortably. She shapes the space gently, without force. In some lesser-known accounts, families were said to warm bedding in advance by placing it near the hearth before use. This practice helped avoid the shock of cold surfaces against the body, especially for infants who are more sensitive to sudden temperature changes. You imagine the effect, a small but meaningful comfort. The fire shifts again, sending a brief wave of warmth across the room. You feel it touch your hands, then fade slightly as it moves outward. The cradle receives part of this warmth, though softened by the distance, creating a more stable and gentle environment. The balance holds carefully. You notice how the mother does not sit too far from the cradle, maintaining a position where she can respond quickly if needed. Her presence adds another layer of warmth, not just physically, but through a tension that never fully relaxes. She listens constantly, even in silence. A faint sound reaches your ears, the soft creak of wood as the cradle settles under the baby's weight. It is a quiet sound, almost lost beneath the crackle of the fire, yet it carries meaning. It tells you that the space is occupied, that life continues within this small enclosure. The room feels alive. In quiet ways, you shift slightly, feeling the texture of the floor beneath you, and notice again how cold it remains compared to the air near the hearth. The cradle's raised structure creates a small separation from this cold surface, reducing the direct transfer of chill. Elevation matters, even slightly. Some researchers have questioned how safe cradle placement truly was, especially in homes where fire sparks or uneven heat could pose risks. There is ongoing discussion about how families balance the need for warmth with the potential dangers of proximity to open flames. You reflect on that some softly. Not all choices were without risk, yet here the arrangement feels thoughtful, shaped by observation and adjustment over time. The distance from the hearth, the layering of fabric, the positioning within the room, all seem to work together to create a stable pocket of warmth. It feels intentional, deeply considered. The baby shifts once more, making a small sound that fades quickly as the warmth holds steady. The mother leans forward, placing her hand lightly near the child, not touching, just sensing the air again. She checks without disturbing. A quiet habit. The fire continues its slow rhythm, the light moving gently across the cradle's edges, revealing the grain of the wood and the soft folds of fabric within. The shadows shift, but nothing feels uncertain. The space remains calm. Held together by careful choices, you begin to understand that warmth here is not just about materials, but about placement. Where something rests, how close it is to heat, how it interacts with the surrounding air, all of it shapes the experience of comfort. Position becomes protection, a silent form of care. The mother settles back slightly, her gaze still resting on the cradle, her awareness never fully leaving. The baby sleeps within that carefully arranged space, surrounded by layers lifted from the cold ground and held within the reach of steady warmth. The system continues, quietly, and as you sit within this dim, balanced room, you begin to feel how each decision, each placement, each small adjustment builds upon the last, forming a gentle structure of care that carries through the night. Nothing is random. Everything has a meaning. The cradle rests where it should, the warmth reaches just enough, and the night moves forward steady and unbroken. You remain seated within the gentle circle of firelight, your attention now drawn toward where the mother settles again beside the cradle. The baby rests quietly for a moment, wrapped and placed with care, but the distance between them does not last long. You sense a familiar pattern returning. The mother lifts the child once more. Not hurriedly, simply because it feels right. She draws the baby back against her chest, adjusting the layers as she does, ensuring no warmth escapes during the transition. The movement is smooth practice shaped by countless repetitions that require little thought. The closeness feels natural, almost inevitable. It is a quiet exchange, steady and constant. A widely recognized aspect of medieval domestic life is that shared sleeping arrangements were extremely common not only among adults but also between mothers and infants. This practice allowed body heat to serve as a primary source of warmth, especially during the coldest months when external heat was limited. You feel the logic of it. It requires nothing extra, only presence. The mother shifts slightly, settling into a position that supports both rest and awareness. One arm cradles the baby securely, while the other remains free, occasionally adjusting cloth or responding to small changes in the room. Her breathing slows, steady and even, matching the rhythm of the child. Their warmth blends together. Without effort, you become more aware of the temperature around you, noticing how it feels different depending on where you sit. Close to the mother, the air seems softer, warmer, carrying a faint trace of human scent mixed with wool and smoke. It feels lived in, comforting in a quiet way. You listen closely and hear the subtle sounds that accompany this closeness. The faint rustle of fabric as the baby shifts, the soft exhale of breath, the occasional creak of wood as someone adjusts their position nearby. These sounds form a gentle background, steady and reassuring. Nothing feels sharp. Everything is softened. The baby stirs again this time, pressing slightly closer into the mother's chest. She responds instinctively, drawing the child nearer, reinforcing that small pocket of warmth with her own body heat. No hesitation, only response. In many households, shared sleeping was not simply a choice, but a necessity shaped by limited space and resources. Beds were often shared among family members, and privacy was less important than maintaining warmth and safety through proximity. You imagine the closeness, bodies side by side, breathing together. You shift slightly, adjusting your own position, and notice how even a small movement changes how warmth is felt. The air feels cooler where you were before, warmer where you are now, as if the room itself is shaped by invisible currents of heat. It moves quietly, unseen but present. The mother leans back against the wall, using its support while keeping the baby close. The surface behind her feels cooler than the air near the fire, yet her body seems to bridge that difference, holding warmth where it is needed most. She becomes part of the balance, without effort. A lesser-known detail from historical accounts suggests that some families used layered bedding or additional coverings to create shared warmth zones where multiple people rested together under combined fabric. Whether this was always comfortable remains uncertain, though it appears to have been effective. You consider that gently. Comfort may have been secondary. Warmth came first. The fire continues its steady glow, sending soft light across the room. You notice how the mother occasionally turns slightly, ensuring that one side of her body does not cool too much while the other remains warm. These adjustments are small, almost unnoticeable, yet they maintain balance over time. She is always adapting, even in stillness. You listen again this time, focusing on the rhythm of breathing. The baby's breaths are light and quick, while the mother's are slower, deeper. Together they create a pattern that feels calm, almost hypnotic. It draws you in. You feel your own breathing slow. Some historians have questioned how safe shared sleeping arrangements were, particularly for very young infants. There is ongoing discussion about the risks and benefits, though it is clear that for many families this method provided essential warmth during cold nights. You reflect on that quietly. Not every solution was without concern, yet in this moment the closeness feels protective, not dangerous. The mother's awareness remains constant even as her body rests. She adjusts slightly whenever the baby moves, maintaining that careful balance between comfort and safety. She never fully lets go, even in rest. You glance toward the cradle again now, empty its carefully prepared warmth, waiting quietly. It remains part of the system, but for now, the baby rests in a place that offers more immediate heat. The body becomes the hearth, in its own way. You notice how the layers of cloth compress slightly under the shared warmth, releasing a faint trace of heat that spreads outward. The air near them feels different, almost thicker, carrying that warmth a little further into the room. It reaches you faintly, a soft extension of their closeness. The mother's hand rests gently against the baby's back, not pressing, just present, as if maintaining a connection that goes beyond touch. Her fingers move, occasionally adjusting fabric or simply reassuring the child without waking it. It is a quiet form of care, continuous and calm. You remain still, allowing yourself to settle deeper into the rhythm of the space. The fire burns softly. The air shifts gently. The baby sleeps within the circle of shared warmth held securely against the mother's body. Nothing feels urgent. Everything unfolds slowly. You begin to understand that warmth here is not only created, but shared, passed from one body to another through closeness, fabric, and stillness. It is a living exchange sustained through awareness and quiet adaptation. It cannot be rushed. It must be maintained. The mother adjusts once more, settling into a position that allows both rest and readiness. The baby remains calm, the layers intact, the warmth steady. The system holds again, through contact, through presence. And as you sit within this dim, steady room, you begin to feel how essential this closeness is, not just for survival, but for comfort that reaches beyond the physical. The night continues, soft and unbroken, and the shared warmth carries them forward one quiet breath at a time. You remain within the quiet rhythm of the room, your attention returning to the careful wrapping that surrounds the baby. The fire continues its soft glow, and the air carries a gentle warmth that fades slowly toward the edges of the space. Nothing feels hurried. Everything unfolds with calm precision. Your focus settles on the swaddling again. Noticing more this time, the cloth is not simply layered, but arranged with intention, drawn snugly across the baby's body in a way that limits movement while preserving warmth. Each fold overlaps another, sealing in heat, reducing the small pockets of air where cold might gather. It feels structured, almost like a gentle framework. The mother adjusts one of the bindings, pulling it slightly tighter, then smoothing it down with a slow, practiced motion. Her fingers follow a pattern that seems deeply familiar, guided by memory shaped over many nights like this. She does not hesitate. She refines. A commonly accepted view in historical studies is that swaddling was nearly universal in many parts of medieval Europe, seen as essential for both warmth and proper physical development. Infants were often wrapped for long periods, their limbs held close to encourage straight growth and stability. You consider the belief quietly, the comfort and expectation intertwined. The baby shifts slightly within the wrapping, but the movement is contained, softened by the layers that surround it. The cloth absorbs the motion, preventing sudden exposure to the cooler air beyond. The warmth remains steady, held in place. You lean your awareness closer, noticing how the layers create a small insulated environment that feels separate from the rest of the room. It is as if the baby carries its own pocket of warmth, protected from the shifting air that moves quietly through the space. It feels self-contained, carefully maintained. The mother lifts the edge of the cloth near the baby's face, ensuring there is space for breathing while still preserving heat. The adjustment is subtle but important, balancing warmth with safety in a way that feels instinctive. She checks without interrupting, a quiet habit. You begin to notice how the wrapping also affects the baby's sense of stillness. The contained posture seems to encourage rest, reducing sudden movements that might disturb sleep or allow warmth to escape. Stillness supports warmth, and rest supports both. In some lesser-known traditions, small amulets or protective items were occasionally placed within or near a baby's wrappings, believed to guard against illness or unseen forces. Whether these objects had any real effect remains uncertain, though their presence reflects the deep concern for infant safety. You imagine their placement, hidden within the folds, a silent form of protection. The fire shifts again, sending a soft wave of warmth across the room. You feel it brush against your hands, then fade gently as it spreads outward. The baby's wrappings hold this warmth more effectively, trapping it within their layered structure. The difference is clear, subtle but real. You shift slightly, becoming more aware of your own clothing, how it compares to the wrapping around the child. Your garments feel looser, less contained, allowing more air to move between fabric and skin. The baby's layers are different, more controlled. You notice how the mother occasionally presses her hand lightly against the outer layer, as if checking the retained warmth without disturbing the child. Her touch is gentle but purposeful, guided by a sense of what feels right, rather than precise measurement. She relies on experience. It guides her. Some scholars continue to debate how tightly swaddling was practiced across different communities and whether variations existed depending on region, climate, or available materials. The exact details remain unclear, though the overall practice appears widespread. You reflect on that softly. Not all methods were identical, yet the intention feels consistent: to protect, to preserve, to create a stable environment within an unpredictable world. The wrapping becomes more than fabric. It becomes a tool shaped by care and necessity. You feel its purpose, even without touching it. The baby breathes slowly, the sound barely audible beneath the quiet crackle of the fire. The cloth rises and falls gently with each breath, holding its shape while allowing just enough movement. It feels balanced, between firmness and softness. You glance towards the edges of the room again, where the cold lingers in shadow, waiting patiently. The swaddling acts as a boundary, keeping that presence at a distance, at least for now. The protection holds. Carefully, the mother adjusts her position slightly, drawing the baby closer once more. The layers compress gently, reinforcing the warmth within, while her own body adds another source of heat to the system. The layers and body work together, without conflict. You notice how even the smallest gap in the cloth could allow cold air to slip inside, and how carefully the mother avoids such openings. Every fold is checked, every edge smoothed, ensuring continuity. Nothing's left to chance, as much as possible. You remain still, letting your awareness settle into the rhythm of wrapping, checking, adjusting. The process repeats quietly without urgency and never neglected. It continues through the night, unnoticed yet essential. You begin to understand that swaddling is not a single act, but an ongoing practice refined through attention and repetition. It requires awareness, patience, and a deep understanding of how warmth behaves. It must be maintained. Moment by moment, the fire continues its soft glow, the room holds its balance, and the baby rests within its carefully constructed shelter of cloth and care. Nothing feels excessive. Everything feels necessary. And as you sit within this dim, steady space, you begin to feel how these simple layers carry a deeper meaning, shaped by generations who learned how to protect life against the quiet persistence of winter. The warmth remains, the night continues, and the careful wrapping holds steady and secure through each passing breath. You remain within the steady quiet of the room, your awareness now drifting toward the thicker coverings, resting beside the cradle. The fire continues its soft rhythm, and the air holds that familiar blend of warmth and gentle chill. Nothing calls for urgency. Everything invites observation. Your attention settles on the animal furs. They lie folded carefully, their surfaces uneven textured, carrying a faint earthy scent that lingers beneath the smoke of the hearth. When the mother reaches for one, you notice how she handles it differently from cloth, with a slower, more deliberate touch. It feels heavier, more protective. She lifts the fur and drapes it lightly over the outer layers of the baby's wrapping, not pressing it down but allowing it to rest in a way that traps warmth without compressing the child. The motion is quiet, almost instinctive, shaped by long familiarity. The warmth deepens subtly. You notice how the fur seems to hold heat differently than fabric. It does not simply cover. It creates a barrier, a soft shield that slows the escape of warmth into the surrounding air. The texture traps small pockets of air within it, adding another layer of insulation. It feels effective, even without a touching thought. A well-established observation in historical studies is that animal furs were highly valued for their insulating properties, especially in colder regions where maintaining warmth was essential. These materials were often reused and repurposed, becoming part of everyday survival rather than luxury. You sense their importance, practical and enduring. The baby remains still beneath the added layer, the breathing steady, the small form now further enclosed within this quiet system of protection. The mother adjusts the edges of the fur, ensuring it does not cover the face, maintaining that careful balance between warmth and safety. She checks constantly, without interrupting the calm. You lean your awareness closer, noticing how the scent of the fur blends with the room. There is something organic in it, faint traces of the animal it once belonged to, mixed now with smoke and time. The smell is subtle, but present. You listen as the fur shifts slightly with the baby's movement, producing a soft, muted sound, different from the dry rustle of linen. It feels quieter, heavier, as if absorbing sound as well as warmth. The room softens further, almost hushed. In some lesser-known accounts, certain types of fur were preferred for infants due to their softness and ability to retain heat more effectively. Whether these choices were consistent across regions remains uncertain, but the intention to maximize warmth is clear. You consider that gently. Choices shaped by experience. The fire flickers again, sending a soft glow across the fur's surface, highlighting its uneven texture. You notice how the light does not reflect sharply but diffuses, creating a calm, muted appearance that blends into the surroundings. Nothing feels harsh. Everything is softened. The mother shifts slightly, settling into a position where she can still reach the baby easily. Her hand rests near the edge of the fur, not holding it, just present, ready to adjust if needed. She remains attentive, even in stillness. You become aware again of the temperature differences in the room. Near the cradle, the air feels warmer, held in place by the combination of firecloth and now fur. Further away, the chill remains quiet and patient. The contrast is clear, yet gentle. You adjust your own position slightly, feeling how your clothing responds to the environment. It holds some warmth, but not in the same way. The fur seems to create a deeper level of insulation, something more stable. It adds another layer. Not just physically. Some historians continue to question how widely available such materials were, particularly for poorer households. It's not entirely clear how consistently families could rely on furs, especially during long winters when resources were stretched thin. You reflect on that quietly. Access was not equal, yet here in this moment the presence of the fur feels like a significant advantage, adding to the system of care that surrounds the child. It is not the only source of warmth, but it strengthens the whole. It supports the balance, without replacing it. The baby stirs slightly and the fur shifts with the movement, maintaining its position while allowing just enough flexibility. The mother responds immediately, adjusting the edge to keep everything aligned. She moves with certainty, guided by habit. You notice how the layers now work together in a more complex way. Linen close to the skin, wool above it, fur resting over all. Each material contributes something different, creating a combined effect that feels both simple and refined. The system evolves. With each addition, the fire continues its steady presence, the light moving gently across the room. You feel its warmth, but you also sense how much of that warmth is now being held and managed by the layers around the baby. It is not just about heat, it is about holding it. The mother leans slightly forward, placing her hand near the baby once more, sensing the warmth beneath the layers. Her expression remains calm, her movements measured. She trusts what she feels, more than what she sees. You remain still, allowing your awareness to settle into this deeper understanding of how materials shape comfort. The fur, the cloth, the body heat, the fire, all working together, each playing a role. Nothing stands alone. Everything contributes. The room feels quieter now, as if the added layer has softened not only the temperature, but the atmosphere itself. The sounds are more muted, the light more gentle, the sense of protection more complete. It feels enclosed, safe in a quiet way, and as you sit within this dim, steady space, you begin to feel how these additional layers bring a deeper sense of security, reinforcing the careful balance that carries the baby through the cold night. The warmth holds more fully now. The night continues, and the soft weight of fur rests gently over everything, adding one more quiet defense against the steady presence of winter. You remain within the soft circle of firelight, your awareness gently shifting as the baby begins to stir again. The room has grown quieter, the embers lower the air, slightly cooler than before. The balance holds, but only just. The mother senses it immediately. Before any sound fully forms, she leans forward, lifting the baby from the layered cradle with careful hands, keeping the cloth close so the warmth does not slip away too quickly. The movement is slow and deliberate, shaped by long familiarity with these moments. The baby makes a small sound, soft and searching. You feel the change in the room, subtle but clear. The stillness gives way to a gentle shift, a quiet need that must be met without disturbing the fragile warmth they have built. She settles near the hearth, closer than before. The fire responds with a faint crackle as if acknowledging the movement. The glow touches her face and the edges of the cloth, revealing the careful layers that still hold their shape. She adjusts her position, ensuring the baby remains protected from the cooler air. The warmth must not be lost. Even now, a commonly accepted understanding of medieval life is that nighttime feeding required careful attention to temperature, as exposing an infant too long could lead to discomfort or illness. Mothers often position themselves near the fire to maintain warmth during these quiet interruptions. You can sense the reasoning. It feels necessary. The mother loosens part of the swaddling just enough to allow feeding while keeping the rest intact. Her movements are precise, minimizing exposure, preserving as much warmth as possible. The cloth shifts with a soft rustle, then settles again. The baby quiets. Gradually, you notice how the act of feeding becomes part of the warmth itself. The closeness, the contact, the stillness all contribute to maintaining the baby's comfort. The room seems to adjust around them, holding this moment gently. It feels contained, almost suspended. The smell of the fire deepens as the embers shift, releasing a faint warm scent that mixes with the softer, more human presence near you. The air feels slightly thicker here, carrying both heat and quiet life. You breathe it in, slowly. The mother's posture remains steady, her body curved protectively around the child. She does not rush. There is no sense of urgency, only a calm response to a familiar need that arises through the night. She has done this often. It shows. You listen closely and hear the small sounds that accompany this moment. The faint movement of fabric, the quiet rhythm of breathing, the soft crackle of wood as the fire continues its steady work. Nothing feels disruptive. Everything blends together. In some lesser-known traditions, it is suggested that mothers adjusted feeding times during winter nights to align with maintaining warmth, minimizing the number of times the baby needed to be fully unwrapped. Whether this was a consistent practice remains uncertain, though. It reflects an awareness of the challenges involved. You consider that gently. Small choices matter. The baby shifts slightly, then settles again, the need satisfied, the warmth preserved. The mother begins to adjust the cloth once more, rewrapping the loosened layers with careful hands, restoring the protective cocoon. The process repeats, calm and precise. You notice how she brings the baby close again before placing it down, allowing the shared warmth to return fully before any separation. This moment of closeness feels essential, as if it reinforces the system they depend on. It is not rushed. It cannot be. The fire flickers again, sending a soft glow across the room, touching the cradle, the walls, the floor. The light feels gentler now, more subdued, as if the night itself is deepening around you. The warmth softens, but remains. The mother leans forward, placing the baby back into the cradle, adjusting the layers, ensuring the fur and cloth align just as before. Her fingers move with quiet certainty, guided by habit and awareness. She checks every detail, without thinking about it. Some scholars continue to question how mothers balanced rest with these repeated nighttime tasks, especially during long winters when sleep was fragmented and demands were constant. The exact experience remains difficult to fully understand. You reflect on that quietly. It must have required endurance. Yet here the process feels almost seamless, woven into the rhythm of the night rather than interrupting it. Each action flows into the next, maintaining continuity rather than breaking it. The baby rests again, warm and still. You settle back slightly, feeling the difference in the air now that the moment has passed. The warmth near the hearth lingers, though the room begins to return to its earlier balance. The cycle continues, unnoticed but constant. The mother remains close, her posture relaxed yet attentive, ready for the next small change that may come. Her awareness does not fade even as the room quiets again. She listens without listening, a quiet vigilance. You notice how the fire, the cloth, the body and the actions all work together during these moments. Feeding is not separate from warmth. It becomes part of the system, integrated into the flow of care. Everything connects. Without effort, the baby breathes softly once more, the layers holding steady, the warmth preserved through careful movement and timing. The room settles back into its calm rhythm. Nothing feels disturbed, only gently shifted. And as you sit within this dim, steady space, you begin to understand how even these small interruptions are part of the larger balance, managed with care, patience, and a deep familiarity with the needs of both child and environment. The warmth holds again. The night continues, and the quiet act of feeding becomes another thread in the delicate fabric of survival through winter. You remain within the dim, steady room, your awareness slowly expanding beyond the immediate circle of warmth. The fire continues its low, patient glow, and the baby rests once more within carefully arranged layers. Yet now your attention drifts toward the edges of the space, toward where the cold waits, not aggressively or so aggressively, but persistently. You notice the door first, a simple wooden structure set slightly uneven within its frame. Around its edges, faint lines of darkness suggest the presence of tiny gaps where air can pass. You cannot see the movement clearly, but you can feel it. A thin current, cool against your skin. The mother seems aware of it too. She shifts her position slightly, placing herself between the cradle and the door, not in a dramatic way, but enough to soften the path of that incoming chill. She adjusts without thinking, a quiet instinct. The air near the door feels different, sharper, carrying a faint scent of the outside world. Damp earth, distant wood smoke, something colder, less contained. It slips inward, slowly finding its way through the smallest openings. The cold does not rush. It seeps. A widely recognised aspect of medieval housing is that insulation was minimal, especially in simpler dwellings where materials and construction methods allowed air to move freely through walls, doors and roofing. Keeping warmth inside was a constant challenge. You can feel that challenge here, in every subtle shift. You turn your attention to the walls, noticing their rough surface, the uneven joins between wooden planks. Some areas appear tighter, others slightly open, allowing faint drafts to pass through. The difference is small but meaningful. Every gap matters, even the smallest. The mother reaches for a piece of cloth resting nearby and places it along the lower edge of the door. The motion is simple, almost casual, yet it changes the air immediately. The faint draft softens, becoming less noticeable. A small barrier, but effective. You notice how these adjustments are made without interruption to the overall calm. There is no urgency, no frustration, only a steady response to conditions that are always present. She works with the space, not against it. The baby stirs faintly, reacting perhaps to a slight change in temperature, though the movement is brief. The layers hold their warmth, but the environment continues to shift around them. Nothing remains fixed, not completely. You shift your own position slightly and immediately feel the difference. One side of your body is warmer, closer to the hearth, while the other is touched by a faint chill drifting through the room. The contrast is subtle, but clear. In some lesser-known accounts, families used whatever materials they had available to block drafts, including cloth, straw, or even bundles of reeds. These methods were simple, often temporary, yet they played an important role in maintaining warmth. You imagine the effort, constant and quiet. The fire flickers again, sending a soft pulse of heat outward. It reaches the cradle, the mother, and even the space near the door, though weakened by distance. The warmth meets the incoming chill, creating a gentle tension within the room. A balance, always shifting. You listen carefully and begin to hear the faint whisper of air moving through the gaps, a sound so soft it almost blends into silence. It is not unpleasant just to resent a reminder that the outside world is never fully kept at bay. The room is not sealed. It breathes. The mother glances toward the roof where beams cross overhead. Between them, you can just make out darker spaces where thatch or other materials form a loose barrier against the sky. The insulation there is imperfect, allowing some heat to rise and escape. Warmth drifts upward, slowly. You feel it in the air, a slight dryness, a sense that the heat is always in motion, never entirely contained. The fire provides, but the structure determines how much is kept. Nothing is wasted, yet nothing is fully preserved. Some historians have questioned how effective these simple methods were during the harshest winters, particularly in regions where temperatures drop significantly. There is ongoing discussion about how families endured extended cold with such limited protection. You reflect on that quietly. It must have been difficult, yet here you see a system that responds continuously, adjusting to each small change. The cloth at the door, the positioning of the cradle, the layering around the baby. Each element plays a role in resisting the steady presence of cold. The effort never stops. Even when it seems still, the baby remains calm, the breathing steady, the warmth holding within its small protected space. The mother stays close, her awareness extending outward, sensing not only the child but the room itself. She monitors everything without appearing to. You notice how the firelight reaches only partway toward the door, leaving that area dim and slightly cooler. The shadows there feel deeper, as if the cold gathers more easily where the light fades. Light and warmth move together, and both have limits. You draw your covering closer, feeling again how your own warmth depends on layers and position. The environment shapes every sensation, every small comfort. Nothing exists alone. Everything is connected. The mother adjusts the cloth at the door once more, pressing it slightly tighter into place. The draft lessens again, though not entirely. It never fully disappears. It only softens. You begin to understand that keeping a baby warm in winter was not only about adding heat, but about resisting its loss. The effort is quiet, continuous, shaped by awareness of even the smallest changes. Every detail matters, every moment. The fire continues its steady glow. The baby sleeps within its layered shelter, and the room holds its delicate balance against the cold that waits just beyond its thin boundaries. The warmth remains, for now, and as you sit within this dim breathing space, you feel how fragile and carefully maintained that warmth truly is, protected not by strength but by admire. The night continues, soft and watchful, and the quiet struggle between warmth and cold carries on unseen but constant in every corner of the room. You remain within the softly breathing room, your awareness settling again near the hearth, where the glow has lowered to a deep, steady warmth. The baby rests, the layers hold, and the cold continues its quiet patience at the edges. Nothing feels urgent, yet small actions continue to shape the night. Your attention shifts to the tools nearby. Simple objects. Quietly important. You notice a smooth stone resting near the fire, its surface slightly darkened, as if it has been used often. The mother reaches for it with care, testing its warmth with her fingers before lifting it fully. It holds heat, steady and contained. She wraps the stone in a piece of cloth, folding it over several times to soften the direct contact. The motion is slow measured, ensuring the heat will be gentle rather than harsh. Once prepared, she places it near the cradle, not touching the baby, but close enough to share its warmth. A small addition, but meaningful. You feel the effect almost immediately. The air near the cradle seems to deepen slightly, gaining a more stable warmth that does not depend entirely on the shifting fire. The stone releases its heat slowly, quietly extending the reach of the hearth. It lingers longer, without flick. In many historical settings, heated stones or bricks were used to provide localized warmth, especially during colder nights when maintaining a steady fire could be difficult. These simple tools allowed heat to be stored and released gradually. You sense the practicality. It feels reliable. The baby remains still, the added warmth blending seamlessly into the existing layers of cloth and fur. The mother adjusts the position slightly, ensuring the stone remains at a safe distance while still contributing to the overall comfort. She balances carefully. Always attentive, you lean your awareness closer, noticing how the cloth around the stone feels slightly warmer than the surrounding fabric. The heat spreads outward, slowly creating a gentle pocket of warmth that supports the cradle's environment. It is subtle, but steady. The fire shifts again, its glow pulsing faintly as the wood settles. You notice how the warmth from the stone feels different from the fire, less immediate, more consistent, as if it fills the quieter spaces between the fire's breaths. Two sources working together. A lesser-known practice in some regions involved warming objects such as stones, tiles, or even metal tools, then placing them near bedding to extend warmth through the night. The exact methods varied, but the idea of storing heat in solid materials appears across different accounts. You imagine the process. Simple, thoughtful, repeated. The mother reaches for another small item, a shallow clay vessel resting near the hearth. Its surface carries a faint warmth, suggesting it too has been placed near the fire. She moves it slightly closer to the cradle, adjusting its position with quiet care. Another source of heat. Gently added. You notice how these objects do not dominate the space. They do not replace the fire or the layers of cloth. Instead, they support them, adding stability to a system that depends on many small elements working together. Nothing overwhelms. Everything contributes. The baby shifts slightly, then settles again, the warmth holding steady around it. The mother watches closely, her hand hovering near the cradle, sensing the balance without disturbing it. She trusts the system, but never fully relaxes. You listen carefully and hear the faintest sound as the stone cools, a soft, almost imperceptible change as it releases its stored heat. It blends into the quiet rhythm of the room unnoticed unless you're paying close attention. The room speaks softly, through small ears. You shift your position slightly, feeling the difference between the direct warmth of the fire and the more subtle presence of the heated objects. The contrast is gentle yet clear. Different kinds of warmth, each with its role. Some researchers have raised questions about how safe these methods were, particularly if objects were heated too much or placed too close. The details remain uncertain, though it is evident that careful handling was essential. You reflect on that quietly. Skill mattered. Experience guided each choice. The mother adjusts the cloth around the stone again, ensuring it remains insulated enough to prevent any harsh heat from escaping too quickly. Her movements are slow, precise, shaped by familiarity. She refines the balance. Moment by moment, you notice how the warmth now feels more stable near the cradle, less dependent on the fluctuations of the fire. The combination of stored heat and active flame creates a layered environment more resilient against the cold. It feels more secure, quietly strengthened. The fire continues its steady glow. The stone releases its warmth, the clay vessel adds its own gentle presence. Together they form a network of heat that extends beyond a single source. It is a system, built from simple parts. The baby remains calm, breathing softly, the layers holding the warmth sustained through careful planning and quiet attention. The mother remains nearby, her awareness never fully leaving the space. She listens without needing to hear. You settle back slightly, allowing yourself to feel how these small additions change the room. The air feels more even less vulnerable to sudden shifts. The cold still exists, but it is held at a distance more effectively now. The balance improves. Without drawing attention, you begin to understand that keeping a baby warm was not only about responding to immediate needs, but about preparing in advance, adding small layers of security that reduce risk over time. It is quiet foresight, practiced again and again. The mother glances once more at the cradle, then at the fire, then at the small objects she has placed nearby. Each element is part of her awareness, part of the system she maintains through the night. Nothing is forgotten, nothing is assumed. And as you sit within this dim, carefully managed space, you begin to feel how these simple tools extend the reach of warmth, offering stability in a world where heat can fade so easily. The warmth holds more evenly now. The night continues, and the quiet presence of stone and clay adds another layer of protection, supporting the fragile balance that carries the baby through the cold. You remain within the steady hush of the room, your attention slowly widening beyond the immediate circle of mother and child. The fire continues its low, patient glow, and the warmth feels more stable now, supported by cloth fur and those quietly heated objects resting nearby. Another presence begins to take shape. Not loud, not sudden, just quietly there. You notice a second woman seated near the far side of the hearth. Her posture relaxed, her movements slow and deliberate. She has been present for some time, yet only now does your awareness fully settle on her. She watches calmly, with practiced eyes. Her hands rest loosely in her lap, though you sense that they are never truly still. There is a readiness in her, a quiet alertness that does not interrupt the calm of the room. When she shifts, it is subtle, almost unnoticeable yet purposeful. She understands the space deeply. You begin to realize that she is not simply another occupant of the room. Her presence carries a different weight, shaped by experience rather than routine. When the baby stirred earlier, her gaze lifted slightly, not in alarm but in quiet recognition. She noticed everything, without needing to act. In many medieval communities, experienced women, such as midwives or elder caregivers, often guided younger mothers through the challenges of childbirth and early care. Their knowledge was rarely written down, passed instead through observation, memory, and shared practice. You sense that here, knowledge without words. The mother glances toward her briefly, a small look that carries understanding rather than question. Nothing is spoken yet, something is acknowledged, as if a silent reassurance passes between them. It is enough, no explanation needed. The older woman leans forward slightly, her eyes moving from the fire to the cradle, then back again. You notice how she studies the balance of the room, the placement of objects, the layering of warmth, all without drawing attention to herself. She reads the space like a familiar text. The baby shifts faintly, And though the mother responds first, the older woman's posture changes just slightly, ready to assist if needed. She does not intervene, but her presence offers support that feels steady and calm, a quiet safety. Always nearby, you listen closely and notice how her movements produce different sounds. The soft creak of the wood beneath her weight, the faint rustle of heavier cloth, the subtle shift of breath. These sounds blend into the room, adding depth rather than distraction. The atmosphere deepens gently. Some historical interpretations suggest that midwives often remained present for extended periods after birth, particularly during difficult seasons when infants were most vulnerable. Their role extended beyond delivery into ongoing care and guidance. You reflect on that softly. Support was continuous, not limited to a single moment. The older woman reaches toward the fire, adjusting a small piece of wood with practiced ease. Her movements mirror those of the mother, yet carry a slightly different rhythm shaped by years of repetition. She does not rush, she refines. The fire responds with the faint shift, its glow strengthening just enough to maintain balance. The adjustment is small, yet it reinforces the warmth that holds the room together. Experience shows in small actions, often unnoticed. You notice how the mother seems to relax slightly in her presence, even if only by a small degree. There is a shared understanding here, a sense that responsibility is held by more than one person. It lightens the burden. Quietly. A lesser-known detail from historical accounts suggests that knowledge of infant care often varied widely between regions, with practices shaped by local traditions, available materials, and community experience. The exact consistency of these methods remains uncertain. You consider that gently. Not all knowledge was universal, yet here in this room you feel a continuity that goes beyond individual experience. It is shared, passed from one to another, refined through observation and necessity. It feels enduring, carried across time. The baby settles again, the breathing soft and steady, the layers holding their warmth. The older woman watches for a moment longer, then leans back slightly, her posture easing without losing awareness. She remains present, even in stillness. You become aware of how the room now feels slightly more secure, not because anything has changed physically, but because there is an added layer of attention, a second set of eyes, a deeper well of experience. It changes the atmosphere, subtly. The fire continues its gentle rhythm. The stone and clay release their stored warmth. The cloth and fur hold their layers. All of it remains as before, yet the presence of shared knowledge adds something less visible. Confidence, quiet and steady. You shift your position slightly, feeling how the warmth holds around you, supported by the careful arrangement of both objects and people. The environment is shaped not only by materials but by understanding. Knowledge becomes part of the system, as essential as heat itself. Some historians continue to question how much influence midwives had within everyday households, especially outside of childbirth. The details are not always clear, though. Their presence in many accounts suggests a role that extended beyond a single event. You reflect on that quietly. Their impact may have been greater than recorded. The mother adjusts the baby's wrapping once more, her movements steady, her awareness calm. The older woman watches, not critiquing, not intervening, simply observing with quiet approval. A shared rhythm, without words. You listen again to the room, noticing how the sounds now feel layered, richer, shaped by the presence of more than one attentive figure. The fire, the breathing, the subtle movements all continue in quiet harmony. Nothing feels disrupted, only supported. And as you sit within this dim, steady space, you begin to feel how warmth is not only maintained through materials and actions, but also through shared knowledge, passed gently from one person to another. The system holds, more securely now. The night continues, and the quiet presence of experience adds another unseen layer, strengthening the fragile balance that carries the baby through the cold. You remain within the soft, layered quiet, your awareness settling once more on the small rise and fall of the baby's breathing. The fire continues its steady glow, the warmed stone releases its slow heat, and the careful layers of cloth and fur hold their shape. Yet something else lingers now, a quiet concern, not loud, but always present. You notice it in the way the mother watches, not only for comfort, but for signs that are harder to see. Her gaze rests gently on the baby's face, observing the color of the skin, The rhythm of each breath, the smallest change in movement. She is not only keeping the baby warm, she is watching for fragility. The room feels calm, yet beneath that calm there is a constant awareness that warmth alone is not always enough. The cold carries risks that cannot always be controlled, especially for a body so new and delicate. The baby is vulnerable in ways not always visible. A widely held understanding in historical study is that infant mortality rates were significantly higher in pre-modern societies, particularly during winter months, when cold and illness could combine in difficult ways. Even small changes in temperature or health could have serious consequences. You feel that weight gently. It settles into the room. The baby stirs slightly, a faint movement that causes the cloth to shift with a soft rustle. The mother responds immediately, adjusting the layers, bringing the child closer for a moment as if reaffirming the warmth already in place. She checks constantly, without appearing anxious. You notice how she places her hand near the baby's chest, not pressing, just sensing the rhythm of breathing. Her fingers remain there for a moment longer than before, as if listening through touch. The pause is subtle, but meaningful. You listen too, becoming aware of the sound of breath in a deeper way. It is soft, almost inaudible, yet steady, forming a quiet rhythm that blends with the crackle of the fire and the faint movement of air in the room. The rhythm holds, for now. In some lesser-known accounts, families has relied on touch, observation, and instinct rather than tools to assess a baby's condition. The warmth of the skin, the strength of movement, the sound of breathing all served as quiet indicators of well-being. You imagine the reliance, care guided by senses. The older woman near the hearth glances over, her eyes narrowing slightly, not with alarm, but with attention. She shifts her position just enough to see more clearly her presence, adding another layer of quiet vigilance. She notices the same details. Without needing to speak, the fire flickers, sending a gentle wave of warmth across the room. You feel it brush against your skin, then settle again into a steady glow. The warmth feels reassuring, yet you sense that it must be maintained carefully. It cannot be trusted alone. It must be watched. You notice how the mother adjusts the baby's position slightly, ensuring the head is supported, the face unobstructed, the layers secure but not too tight. Each movement reflects an understanding that balance is essential. Too much pressure, too little warmth, either could matter. Some scholars have long debated how family is distinguished between ordinary discomfort and signs of illness in infants, especially without modern medical knowledge. The boundary between the two was not always clear, and responses were shaped by experience and belief. You reflect on that softly. Uncertainty was part of daily life. The baby exhales gently, a soft sound that fades quickly into the quiet. The mother's shoulders relax just slightly, though her attention remains focused. She does not look away for long. She remains present. Always. You become aware of the temperature again, how it shifts subtly. With each movement of the fire, each adjustment of cloth, each small draft that finds its way through the room. The environment is never fixed, always changing in small ways. The balance must be maintained. Moment by moment, the older woman leans forward slightly, her hand hovering near the baby, not touching, just sensing. After a moment she leans back again, her posture easing, her attention still present, a silent reassurance shared between them. You notice how the room feels slightly heavier now, not in a physical sense, but in awareness. The calm remains, but it carries a deeper understanding of what is at stake. Care is constant, even when everything seems still. A lesser-known observation from historical records suggests that certain signs, such as changes in skin warmth or breathing patterns, were interpreted through a mix of practical knowledge and traditional beliefs. The accuracy of these interpretations varied, but they guided action nonetheless. You consider that gently. Knowledge was shaped by experience. The mother adjusts the fur layer once more, smoothing it gently, ensuring the warmth remains even across the baby's body. Her movements are careful, controlled, never hurried. She trusts the process, but never assumes. The fire continues its soft glow. The warmed objects release their steady heat. The cloth and fur hold their layered protection. The system remains in place, yet the awareness within it has deepened. It feels more attentive, more watchful. You listen again to the breathing, the soft rhythm that continues without interruption. The baby rests, The warmth holds and the quiet vigilance remains. Nothing is taken for granted, not even rest. You shift slightly, feeling the warmth around you, and begin to understand that keeping a baby safe in winter was not only about creating comfort, but about recognizing the fine line between stability and risk. It required attention, constant and gentle. The mother's hand remains near the baby, her presence steady, her awareness unbroken. The older woman sits quietly nearby, her experience adding another layer of unseen support. Together they watch, without needing to speak, and as you sit within this dim, carefully balanced space, you begin to feel how warmth, care and vigilance all blend into one continuous effort carried through the long winter night. The baby breathes softly. The warmth remains, and the quiet watch continues steady and patient through every small moment of the night. You remain within the quiet rhythm of the room, your awareness now drifting towards the clothing that surrounds both mother and child. The fire continues its low, steady glow, and the warmth feels gently layered, held not only by the hearth and the wrapping, but by what each person wears. Your attention settles on the garments, simple at first glance, but carefully chosen. You notice how the mother's clothing is arranged in multiple layers, each one serving a purpose beyond appearance. The inner fabric rests closer to her skin, lighter and smoother, while the outer layers are thicker, heavier, holding warmth in place. The structure feels intentional, built for endurance. She adjusts her sleeve slightly, and you see how the fabric overlaps at the wrist, reducing exposure where cold air might enter. Even the smallest openings are considered shaped by experience rather than instruction. Every detail matters, even the edges. It's widely recognized that medieval clothing, particularly in colder climates, relied heavily on layering to manage temperature. Linen was often worn close to the skin, while wool provided insulation, allowing people to adapt to changing conditions throughout the day and night. You sense that system clearly. It surrounds you. The baby, still wrapped in careful swaddling, is also dressed beneath those layers, though you cannot see it directly. You imagine a small linen shift, but perhaps slightly worn, softened by a repeated use, forming the first barrier against the cold. Soft against the skin, warmth built outward. You notice how the mother occasionally adjusts her own clothing, while holding the child, pulling a fold closer, tightening a wrap, ensuring that her own warmth remains stable. Her comfort directly affects the baby's. The connection is constant, shared through fabric and touch. You shift your awareness toward your own covering again, feeling how the thickness of wool slows the loss of heat yet still allows small traces of cool air to reach your skin. It is not perfect, but it is enough when combined with everything else. Nothing works alone. Everything contributes. The older woman near the hearth wears similar layers, though her garments appear slightly heavier, perhaps shaped by years of experience in managing cold. Her posture remains relaxed, yet her clothing seems to hold warmth with quiet efficiency. She has learned what works through repetition. In some lesser-known traditions, garments were sometimes worn continuously for extended periods during winter, not simply for convenience, but to maintain a stable layer of warmth that would otherwise be lost through frequent changing. You consider that gently. Practicality-shaped habits. The fire shifts again, sending a soft glow across the folds of cloth, revealing subtle differences in texture and thickness. You notice how some fabrics catch the light while others absorb it, creating a quiet variation in the room's appearance. Light moves differently. Across each surface, the baby stirs slightly, and the mother adjusts both the swaddling and her own outer layer, at the same time reinforcing the shared warmth between them. The movement is smooth, almost seamless, as if the two systems are connected. She moves as one with the process, without pause. You begin to notice how clothing also changes between day and night. During the day, garments may allow more movement, more flexibility, while at night they seem arranged for stillness, for holding warmth in place during long hours of rest. Function shifts with time, quietly. You listen closely and hear the soft sound of fabric moving as the mother shifts her position. The cloth produces a faint rustle, dry and gentle, blending into the steady background of the fire. The sound is calming, almost rhythmic. Some scholars have explored how clothing practices varied across regions influenced by climate-available materials and local customs. The exact details differ, but the reliance on layered garments appears consistent. You reflect on that softly. Adaptation shaped everything. The older woman reaches toward her own shawl, pulling it slightly tighter around her shoulders. The motion is slow, almost unthinking, yet it reinforces the warmth she carries with her. She responds to the air, without needing to focus. You notice how the baby's warmth depends not only on its own layers, but on the stability of the mother's temperature. If she grows cold, the shared warmth weakens. If she remains warm, the system holds more effectively. The connection is direct, and essential. You shift again, feeling how your own comfort changes with small adjustments in clothing and position. The environment continues to shape every sensation, every small degree of warmth or chill. Nothing is fixed. Everything responds. A lesser-known observation suggests that some garments were intentionally oversized or layered in ways that created small pockets of trapped air enhancing insulation. Whether this was always deliberate remains uncertain, though the effect would have been noticeable. You imagine those spaces, tiny pockets of warmth. The fire continues its steady glow, the heated stone and clay vessel release their stored warmth, and the layered clothing holds its quiet role within the system. Each element remains in balance. Nothing dominates. Everything supports. The baby settles again, the breathing soft and even, the layers intact. The mother's clothing remains close her body, warmth steady, her movements calm and controlled. She maintains the balance. Without effort, you begin to understand that clothing here is not simply protection from the cold, but part of a larger structure that holds warmth across bodies, spaces, and time. It connects the individual to the environment in a quiet, continuous way. It becomes part of the system. Not separate from it, the room feels steady again, the warmth holding gently against the persistent presence of cold beyond the walls. The layers of cloth worn and wrapped continue their silent work. The night continues, unbroken, and as you sit within this carefully arranged space, you feel how every thread, every fold, every layer contributes to the fragile yet enduring effort of keeping warmth close. The balance holds through fabric and care, and the quiet presence of clothing carries the warmth forward one gentle moment at a time. You remain within the steady hush, your awareness widening, beyond this single room to imagine how other spaces might hold warmth through the same long winter night. The fire beside you continues its quiet work, yet you begin to sense how much depends on the structure that surrounds it. Not all homes feel like this. Not all warmth settles the same way. You picture a smaller rural dwelling, its walls built from timber and packed earth, its surfaces uneven but familiar. The hearth sits at the centre, open and exposed, with smoke rising slowly toward a vent or simple gap in the roof. The warmth gathers low, close to the ground. In such a space, people would remain near the fire as much as possible, arranging their lives around it. Sleeping areas, cradles and simple bedding would be drawn inward, forming a tight circle of shared heat. Everything moves toward the centre, drawn by necessity. It's widely accepted that many rural medieval homes had limited internal divisions, meaning that families often lived, worked and slept within a single shared space. This arrangement made it easier to conserve heat during cold seasons. You feel the closeness. It shapes every moment. Then your thoughts drift toward a different kind of setting, perhaps a small town dwelling, built more solidly with thicker walls and a more defined layout. The hearth might be contained within a stone structure with a chimney guiding smoke upward. The air moves differently there, more controlled. In these homes, warmth might travel less freely, confined by walls that create separate spaces. While this offers some protection from drafts, it also means that not every corner receives equal heat. Some rooms feel warmer, others remain cold. You sense how a mother in such a space would need to choose carefully where to place her baby. Not every area would be suitable. Not every room would hold warmth through the night. Placement becomes critical. Once again, you return your awareness to the room around you, noticing how the simple layout allows heat to spread more evenly, even if it escapes more easily as well. There is a trade-off in every structure, a balance between holding warmth and allowing air to move. Nothing is perfect, only adapted. You listen to the fire again, the soft crackle echoing slightly against the walls, and imagine how that sound might change in different spaces. In a larger room it might feel distant, in a smaller one more immediate. Sound reflects the space, just as warmth does. A lesser-known observation suggests that some households used curtains or hanging cloths to divide areas within a room, creating smaller pockets where heat could gather more effectively. These partitions were simple, yet they could make a noticeable difference. You imagine those hanging layers, soft barriers, quietly shaping the air. The baby shifts gently in the cradle, and the mother adjusts the coverings once more. The system here remains stable, yet you now see it as one version among many, each shaped by its environment. No two homes were identical. Each required its own understanding. You notice how the older woman glances briefly around the room, her eyes moving across the walls, the door, the hearth. It is as if she is reading the structure itself, assessing how it holds warmth where it might fail. She sees beyond the surface, into the function of the space. Some historians have explored how regional differences in building materials influence daily life, particularly in winter. Wood, stone, and earth each behaved differently in terms of insulation and heat retention, shaping how people adapted their routines. You reflect on that softly. The building itself becomes part of care. You shift your position slightly, feeling how the warmth remains strongest near the hearth, yet still reaches you where you sit, in a different structure that might not be the case. The distribution matters, more than the source alone. You begin to understand that keeping a baby warm depended not only on actions and materials, but on the space itself. The walls, the floor, the openings all played a role in shaping the experience of cold and warmth. The environment participates. In every moment, the fire flickers again, its light moving gently across the room, revealing the simple textures of wood and cloth. The space feels stable, yet you now sense how easily that stability could shift in a different setting. A thinner wall, a wider gap, a higher ceiling, each would change everything. The mother remains focused, her attention steady, her movements calm. She works within this space, understanding its patterns, its strengths, its limits. She adapts to it, without needing to think. The baby breathes softly, the layers holding the warmth sustained. The room continues its quiet balance, shaped by both human care and physical structure. It is a shared effort between people and place. A lesser discussed detail suggests that in some wealthier households, additional rooms or better insulation may have provided more stable warmth, though this varied widely and was not always consistent. You consider that gently. Comfort was not equal, yet regardless of setting, the same principles appear again and again. Positioning, layering, awareness, adaptation, each one shaped by the space in which it unfolds. The method remains. Even as the environment changes, you settle deeper into the quiet, allowing this broader understanding to rest alongside your earlier observations. The warmth here feels familiar, yet now it carries the weight of comparison. It could be different, in another place. The fire continues its steady glow. The baby rests within its carefully arranged shelter, and the room holds its balance through the long winter night. Nothing feels excessive. Everything feels necessary, and as you sit within this dim, steady space, you begin to feel how each home, each structure shaped the way warmth was created, held and protected. The night continues, unbroken, and the quiet relationship between shelter and survival carries on, shaping every small act of care within the cold. You remain within the gentle stillness, your awareness now widening to include not just the room, but the quiet connections between the people inside it. The fire continues its soft, steady glow, and the warmth feels layered, supported not only by materials and placement, but by shared presence. The mother is not alone. Not entirely. You notice how the older woman shifts slightly closer. Her movement unhurried, her attention calm. She does not take over any task yet. Her nearness changes the atmosphere in a subtle way. Support becomes visible, even without words. The two women exist within the same rhythm, their awareness overlapping their actions, complementing each other without interruption. When one moves, the other notices. When one pauses, the other remains ready. It feels coordinated, but unspoken. A commonly accepted view of medieval life is that communities, especially women within households, often shared knowledge and responsibilities related to childcare. This collective approach helped manage the constant demands of raising infants in difficult conditions. You sense that here. A quiet network of care. The baby stirs slightly and the mother adjusts the layers once more. At the same time, the older woman leans forward just enough to shift a piece of cloth near the cradle, reducing a faint draft that had begun to form. She acts gently, without drawing attention. You notice how these small actions overlap, each one reinforcing the other. The system of warmth does not rely on a single person, but on a shared awareness that moves through the room. Nothing is carried alone. Everything is supported. You listen closely and hear the subtle sounds of movement between them, the soft rustle of fabric, the quiet shift of weight, the faint exhale of breath. Each sound blends into the background, creating a rhythm that feels steady and reassuring. The room breathes together, in quiet harmony. In some lesser-known accounts, neighbours or extended family members would gather during the colder months, not only for companionship, but to share warmth and labour. Whether this was common in all regions remains uncertain, though it appears in various descriptions of daily life. You imagine the closeness, shared space, shared effort. The fire flickers again and the older woman reaches forward to adjust a small piece of wood. The mother at the same moment tightens the fur layer around the baby. Their movements align naturally without hesitation. They understand the rhythm, without needing to discuss it. You notice how the presence of another person adds more than just practical help. It brings a sense of stability, a quiet reassurance that the system can be maintained even if one person rests for a moment. It eases the strain. Subtly, the baby settles again, the breathing soft and even, the warmth holding steady within the layered cocoon. The mother's posture relaxes slightly, though her awareness remains present. She trusts the shared space. It supports her. Some historians have explored how social structures influence survival during winter, suggesting that households with stronger communal ties may have had greater resilience. The exact impact is difficult to measure, but the idea appears repeatedly. You reflect on that softly. Connection matters, even in silence. You shift your position slightly, feeling how the warmth around you remains steady, supported not just by fire and fabric, but by the coordinated actions of those within the room. It feels more secure, more complete. The older woman leans back again, her hands resting calmly, her gaze still attentive. She does not need to act constantly. Her presence alone contributes to the balance. She watches, quietly. You notice how the mother glances toward her once more, a brief look that carries understanding and trust. Nothing is said yet, the exchange feels meaningful. It strengthens the moment, without breaking it. A lesser discussed detail suggests that in some communities knowledge of infant care was passed informally through observation and shared experience rather than direct instruction. The process was gradual, shaped by time and repetition. You consider that gently. Learning without teaching. The fire continues its steady glow, the warmed objects release their quiet heat, and the layers of cloth and fur hold their protective structure. The system remains stable, supported by both materials and people. Everything works together, without conflict. The baby breathes softly, the room holds its balance, and the quiet cooperation between the two women continues without interruption. Each small action reinforces the next. The pattern sustains itself through shared awareness. You begin to understand that warmth here is not only physical but also relational. It is created and maintained through a tension that flows between individuals adapting to the needs of the moment. It is a collective effort, even in stillness. The mother adjusts her position slightly, and the older woman responds with a small movement of her own, maintaining the balance without needing to think. They move together. In quiet coordination, you settle deeper into the calm feeling how this shared presence adds another layer of stability to the room. The warmth feels more secure, the system more resilient. Nothing feels fragile now, only carefully maintained. And as you sit within this dim, steady space, You begin to feel how the quiet support between women shape the experience of care, making it more sustainable through long cold nights. The night continues, soft and unbroken, and the shared rhythm of attention and care carries the baby forward, supported not by one but by many gentle hands and watchful eyes. You remain within the slow, steady quiet, your awareness now drifting towards something less visible yet deeply present in the room. The fire continues its soft glow, the warmth holds, and the baby rests within careful layers. Yet beneath all of this, another kind of protection seems to linger, not made of cloth, not shaped by heat, but felt. You notice it in the way the mother pauses for a brief moment, her gaze lowering, her movement softening even further. Her lips move slightly, forming quiet words that barely rise above a whisper. The sound is almost inaudible, yet it carries meaning. She is not speaking to anyone in the room, but her tone suggests intention, a quiet reaching beyond the physical space. The older woman glances toward her, then lowers her own gaze as well, as if recognizing the gesture. They share the moment. Without interruption, it's widely recognized that religious belief played a significant role in medieval daily life, especially in moments of vulnerability such as childbirth and infant care. Prayers, blessings, and small rituals were often used as a form of protection and reassurance. You sense that here, a quiet layer of faith. The mother gently touches the edge of the baby's wrapping, her fingers lingering for a moment longer than before. The gesture feels both practical and symbolic, as if the act of care extends beyond the physical. She protects in every way she knows. Seen and unseen, you listen closely, and though the words are too soft to distinguish their rhythm, carries a calming quality blending into the steady sounds of the room. The fire crackles, the cloth shifts, the breath continues. The moment deepens, softly. In some lesser-known traditions, small objects such as charms, tokens, or blessed items were placed near infants believed to guard against illness or unseen dangers. Whether these objects had any measurable effect remains uncertain, though their presence reflects a deep need for reassurance. You imagine their placement, hidden within the space, quietly present. The older woman reaches toward a small item resting near her side, something simple, perhaps carved or worn smooth by touch. She holds it briefly, then sets it back down near the hearth. The gesture is small, but deliberate. You notice how these actions do not disrupt the rhythm of care. They exist alongside it, woven into the same quiet flow of attention that maintains warmth and comfort. Nothing feels separate. Everything is connected. The baby shifts slightly, and the mother responds as before, adjusting the layers, ensuring warmth is preserved. Yet now there is an added softness to her movements, as if the quiet ritual has settled something within her. Her touch feels calmer, more grounded. Some scholars have explored how belief systems influence perceptions of health and protection in medieval households, suggesting that spiritual practices often complemented practical methods of care. The exact relationship between the two remains difficult to define. You reflect on that gently, understanding shaped by both faith. The fire flickers again, sending a soft glow across the room, illuminating the faces of both women. Their expressions remain calm, their attention steady, their actions measured. The room feels balanced, in more ways than one. You shift your awareness slightly, noticing how the atmosphere has changed, not in temperature, but in feeling. There is a quiet reassurance now, something that settles alongside the physical warmth. It is difficult to name, but easy to feel. The older woman leans back again, her posture relaxed, her gaze still attentive. The small object remains near her, its presence subtle, almost unnoticed, unless you're looking for it. A quiet companion, in the background. You begin to understand that in a world where many things could not be controlled, people often reached for forms of protection that extended beyond the material. These practices may not have altered the physical environment, but they shaped how it was experienced. They offered comfort and a sense of control. The baby breathes softly, the layers hold their warmth, and the room continues its steady rhythm. The prayer, the gesture, the quiet belief, all settle into the background, becoming part of the system without drawing attention. Nothing feels out of place. Everything belongs. You listen again to the subtle sounds of the room, noticing how they remain unchanged. The fire continues. The cloth shifts, the breath rises and falls. The moment remains steady, unbroken. A lesser discussed observation suggests that rituals surrounding infant care varied widely across regions influenced by local traditions and beliefs. The details differ, but the intention to protect remains consistent. You consider that softly. Care takes many forms. The mother adjusts her position once more, drawing the baby slightly closer before settling again. Her movements remain calm, her awareness steady, her presence constant. She continues her watch. With quiet strength, you feel the warmth around you, the layered system of fire fabric and human presence. Now you also sense the less tangible layer, the quiet reassurance that rests beneath it all. It completes the space in a way that's hard to see, and as you sit within this dim, carefully held room, you begin to feel how physical care and quiet belief work together, shaping a sense of safety that extended beyond what could be touched. The night continues, soft and steady, and the gentle presence of faith lingers in the background, adding one more layer to the delicate balance that carries the baby through the cold. You remain within the quiet circle of warmth, your awareness softening as the night stretches onward. The fire continues its low, steady glow, and the baby rests within layers that now feel familiar. Yet your attention begins to shift again, toward the sounds, subtle and continuous. You notice how the room is never truly silent. Even in stillness, it carries a gentle rhythm made of many small elements, each one contributing to the atmosphere that surrounds you. The fire speaks first, soft and steady. It crackles lightly as the wood settles, releasing small bursts of sound that rise and fade without urgency. Sometimes a sharper pop breaks through, brief and contained, then disappears into the quiet once more. The sound is comforting, predictable. You listen more closely and begin to hear the quieter layers beneath it. The faint movement of cloth as the mother adjusts her position. The soft brush of wool against wood. The subtle shift of the cradle as it settles. Nothing is loud, everything is gentle. A widely noted observation in studies of historical living conditions is that pre-modern households were shaped by natural soundscapes rather than mechanical noise. The absence of sudden or artificial sounds created an environment that felt steady and continuous. You sense that difference clearly. It shapes how the room feels. The baby breathes softly, a rhythm so light it almost disappears into the background. You find yourself listening for it, not because it demands attention, but because it anchors the moment. It reassures. Without effort, the mother's breathing joins it slower, deeper, forming a second rhythm that blends with the first. Together, they create a pattern that feels calm, almost meditative. You follow it naturally, without thinking. The older woman shifts slightly, and the wood beneath her lets out a faint creak. The sound is low-stretched, almost like a quiet response to her movement. It does not disturb the space. It becomes part of it. The room responds. In small ways, you notice the faint whisper of air again, moving through unseen gaps, brushing lightly against surfaces. It carries a cool note, yet it does not overwhelm the warmth. Instead, it adds contrast, a reminder of the outside, just beyond reach. In some lesser-known accounts, people describe nighttime sounds as a way of understanding their surroundings, using familiar patterns to detect anything unusual. The reliability of these descriptions varies, though the idea reflects a deep awareness of the environment. You consider that gently. Listening becomes a form of care. The fire shifts again and a small ember collapses inward with a soft sound. The glow brightens briefly, then settles back into its steady rhythm. The warmth responds in kind, rising and falling almost imperceptibly. Heat has a rhythm. Just like sound, you shift slightly and the floor beneath you produces a faint, uneven response. The texture of the surface adds its own voice, subtle but present. Every material contributes. Even in stillness, the baby stirs for a moment, releasing a small soft sound that fades quickly. The mother responds immediately, her hand moving gently to adjust the layers, her touch quiet and precise. No words are needed. The response is enough. Some scholars have explored how sound influenced perception of safety in historical settings. suggesting that familiar consistent noises could provide reassurance while unexpected ones might signal concern. The extent of this effect remains difficult to measure. You reflect on that softly. Familiarity brings calm. The room continues its quiet symphony. The fire, the breath, the fabric, the faint movement of air. Each element repeats, forming patterns that feel stable and predictable. Nothing feels random. Everything follows a rhythm. You notice how the sounds seem to slow your own thoughts, guiding your awareness into a calmer state. The steady repetition creates a sense of continuity, carrying you gently through the passing moments. Time feels different here, less defined. The older woman adjusts her position again, and the soft rustle of her clothing blends seamlessly into the background. The sound is neither sharp nor distracting. It simply exists. Another layer in the atmosphere, quietly present. The baby settles once more, the breathing steady, the warmth intact. The room returns to its familiar balance, the sounds continuing without interruption. Nothing has changed, yet everything feels deeper. A lesser discussed detail suggests that the absence of loud or abrupt noise in such environments may have contributed to more consistent sleep patterns, though this remains uncertain and likely varied. You consider that gently. Stillness has its own effect. You listen again, allowing the sounds to guide your awareness. The fire crackles softly. The breath continues. The cloth shifts with small movements. The rhythm remains unbroken. You begin to understand that sound here is not separate from warmth or care. It is part of the same system, offering reassurance, guiding attention, and maintaining a sense of stability through the night. It supports the balance without needing to be noticed. The mother remains attentive, her movements quiet, her presence steady. The older woman sits nearby, her awareness equally calm, equally present. Together they listen, even when nothing seems to happen, and as you sit within this dim, gently breathing space, you feel how these soft, continuous sounds shape the experience of the night, adding depth and calm to the careful work of keeping the baby safe and warm. The warmth holds. The rhythm continues, and the quiet music of the room carries you forward one gentle moment at a time. You remain within the gentle rhythm of the room, your awareness soft and steady, shaped by warmth, sound, and quiet care. The fire continues its low glow. The baby rests, and the long night begins to shift in ways that are almost too subtle to notice at first. Something is changing, very slowly. You feel it before you see it. The air carries a faint difference, not warmer but less heavy, as if the darkness itself has begun to loosen its hold. The shadows remain, yet they feel thinner, less complete. The night is beginning to soften. You glance toward the small openings in the structure, the narrow spaces where darkness meets the outside world. There you notice the slightest change, a hint of something beyond the deep black, a quiet suggestion of light, barely there. The mother senses it too, though she does not look directly. Her posture shifts just slightly, as if her body recognizes the passing of time without needing confirmation. She has lived this rhythm many times. The baby remains still, the breathing soft, the layers holding their warmth. Nothing in the system changes yet, but the world beyond the walls begins to move forward. Morning approaches, gently. A broadly accepted understanding of pre-modern life is that daily routines were closely tied to natural light, with dawn marking a gradual return to activity. This transition was rarely sudden, unfolding slowly as darkness gave way to early light. You feel that transition now. It is quiet, almost unnoticed. The fire continues its steady presence, though its role begins to shift. It is no longer the only source of light in the room. A faint distant glow begins to blend with it, softening the contrast between brightness and shadow. The space feels different, more open. You listen closely and notice how the sounds of the night remain, yet they seem to sit within a changing atmosphere. The crackle of the fire feels less dominant. The breathing remains steady. The faint movement of air continues. Everything persists, yet subtly transforms. In some lesser-known descriptions of early mornings in pre-modern homes, people spoke of the way light seemed to return in layers, first barely visible, then gradually revealing familiar shapes. Whether this experience was consistent across regions is uncertain, though the pattern appears often. You imagine that layering, light building slowly. The older woman shifts slightly, her gaze lifting towards the same faint opening. She does not speak yet, her movement suggests recognition. She feels it too. The change is shared. You notice how the room begins to reveal itself more clearly. The texture of the walls, the shape of the cradle, the folds of cloth all become slightly more defined as the darkness eases. Nothing appears suddenly. Everything emerges. The mother adjusts the baby's covering once more, not because of immediate need, but as part of the rhythm that continues regardless of the hour. Her care does not pause with the approach of morning. It remains constant. Through every change, some scholars have explored how seasonal and daily light cycles influence behavior and perception in medieval life, suggesting that people were deeply attuned to these gradual transitions. The exact experience may have varied, but the sensitivity to change appears consistent. You reflect on that softly, awareness shaped by environment. The fire flickers again, its glow now blending with the faint light that begins to touch the edges of the room. The warmth remains steady, though it no longer feels alone in holding the space. Light joins warmth. In quiet partnership, the baby stirs slightly, then settles again, the layers holding the system unchanged. The mother watches her attention steady, her movements calm. She does not rush the morning. It will come on its own. You shift your position slightly, feeling how the air now carries a subtle difference. It feels lighter, less dense, though still cool. The warmth remains necessary, still carefully maintained. The cold has not left, only softened. A lesser discussed observation suggests that the transition from night to morning and often brought a gradual shift in temperature, sometimes making the early hours feel colder before the sun fully rose. The consistency of this pattern remains uncertain. You consider that gently. Change is not always simple. The older woman leans back again, her posture relaxed, her awareness steady. The faint light touches her face, revealing features that were previously hidden in shadow. The room becomes more visible, yet remains quiet. You notice how the sounds continue to guide your awareness. The fire, the breathing, the soft movement of cloth. They remain unchanged even as the light shifts around them. The rhythm holds through every transition. The mother adjusts her position once more, drawing the baby slightly closer before settling again. The warmth remains, the layers intact, the system steady. Nothing is abandoned, nothing is rushed. You begin to understand that the approach of morning does not end the work of care. It simply changes the environment in which that care continues. The system adapts, as it always has. The room now holds both night and early light, a quiet meeting of darkness and dawn. The warmth remains central. The baby rests and the careful balance continues. Everything flows forward, without disruption, and as you sit within this dim, slowly brightening space, you feel how the transition of time adds another layer to the experience, shaping the rhythm of care without breaking it. The night fades gently, the warmth endures, and the quiet arrival of morning carries the baby and the room into the next moment with the same steady calm. You remain within the soft meeting point of night and early light, your awareness steady, your senses gently attuned to the room that has carried you this far. The fire still glows, though more quietly now, and the baby rests within its familiar layers. Something deeper begins to settle, not in the space, but in your understanding. You start to notice how every action you have witnessed feels practiced, not in a rigid way, but in a natural, almost effortless rhythm. Nothing has been invented in this moment. Everything has been learned, repeated, remembered. It feels inherited, passed quietly from one life to another. The mother adjusts the cloth once more, her fingers moving with certainty that does not require thought. She does not pause to consider what to do, her body already knows. The knowledge lives in her hands. In her movements, a well-supported observation in historical study is that much of daily life in pre-modern societies relied on habitual knowledge built through repetition rather than formal instruction. Skills were often absorbed over time, becoming instinctive. You feel that instinct here. It shapes everything. The older woman watches with a calm gaze, her presence reflecting a longer span of memory. You sense that she has seen many winters, many nights like this, each one reinforcing what she already understands. Her experience is quiet, but vast. The baby stirs slightly and both women respond in small ways. The mother adjusts the layers. The older woman shifts the cloth near the door. Neither movement is dramatic, yet both contribute to maintaining balance. Their actions align, without effort. You listen to the room again, noticing how the sounds have not changed yet. They now feel familiar, almost expected. The fire crackles softly. The breath continues. The faint movement of air persists. The rhythm has become known to you. You recognize it now. In some lesser-known reflections, it has been suggested that repetitive care practices may have created a form of memory beyond words, shaping behavior through lived experience rather than conscious thought. The extent of this effect remains uncertain, though the pattern feels clear. You consider that gently. Memory is not always spoken. It is carried. The mother shifts her position slightly, adjusting her clothing and the baby's wrapping at the same time. The movement is smooth, continuous part of a sequence that repeats without interruption. It feels complete. Nothing is missing. You notice how the room itself seems to reflect this sense of continuity. The placement of objects, the arrangement of space, the way warmth is held all suggest a pattern that has been refined over time. It is not accidental. It is learned. Some scholars have explored how generational knowledge shaped survival strategies, particularly in environments where conditions remained consistent across years. The exact details are difficult to trace, yet the influence is widely acknowledged. You reflect on that softly. Each winter leaves a trace. Each experience adds something. The baby breathes steadily, the warmth holds, and the system continues without interruption. You feel how each element supports the others, creating a structure that feels both fragile and enduring. It has lasted this long for a reason. The older woman leans forward, briefly adjusting a small detail near the cradle, then settles back again. Her movement is minimal yet precise, guided by an understanding that has been built slowly over time. She does not need to think, she remembers. You shift your awareness inward for a moment, noticing how the rhythm of the room has settled into you as well. The sounds, the warmth, the pace all feel familiar now. You have learned it too, without trying. A lesser discussed detail suggests that in many historical settings, knowledge was rarely written down in a way that preserved everyday practices. Instead, it was lived, observed, and carried forward through repetition. You consider that quietly. Some knowledge leaves no record, except in action. The fire continues its steady glow, though it now feels like part of a larger system rather than the center of it. The warmth is held by layers, by placement, by shared understanding. Everything works together. Nothing stands alone. The mother glances toward the baby once more, her gaze calm, her movement steady. The older woman remains nearby, her presence unchanged, her awareness constant. They continue their quiet work without interruption. You begin to understand that what you are witnessing is not simply a series of actions, but a pattern shaped by generations, refined through experience and carried forward through memory that lives in the body. It is knowledge without words, care without instruction. The room holds its balance, the baby rests, whilst the slow arrival of the morning continues to unfold beyond the walls. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels uncertain. Everything continues, as it has before. And as you sit within this gently brightening space, you feel how the quiet accumulation of memory and habit sustains life through even the coldest nights. The warmth remains, the rhythm continues, and the knowledge carried silently through hands and actions holds steady, guiding each moment with quiet certainty. You remain within the softly brightening room, your awareness calm, your senses settled into the rhythm that has carried you through the long winter night. The fire continues its gentle glow, now quieter, its roll slowly easing. As the first true light of morning begins to take hold, the baby rests, warm and still. The layers of cloth, wool and fur remain carefully arranged, holding the warmth that's been built and preserved through steady attention. The mother sits nearby, her posture relaxed, yet present her awareness never fully leaving the child. Nothing feels urgent now, only gently complete. The faint light grows stronger, revealing more of the room with each passing moment. The walls once shadowed now show their full texture. The cradle, the hearth, the small objects placed with care all become clearer. The night recedes, slowly and without resistance. A widely accepted understanding of daily life in the medieval period is that the transition from night to morning was gradual, shaped by natural light rather than sudden change. This slow shift allowed routines to begin gently, without disruption. You feel that gentleness here. It carries through everything. The older woman shifts slightly, her gaze lifting toward the growing light. She remains calm, her presence steady, her role complete for now. The room no longer requires the same level of vigilance, though the care itself continues. She has helped hold the night. Now it passes. The mother leans forward, adjusting the baby's wrapping one last time, ensuring that the layers remain secure as the temperature begins its subtle shift. The warmth is still needed, though its source will soon change. The fire is no longer alone, light begins to take its place. You notice how the air feels different now, lighter, less enclosed though. Still cool, the cold has not vanished, but it no longer presses in the same way. The balance has shifted. The room breathes more freely. You listen again and the sounds have softened further. The crackle of the fire is quieter. The breathing remains steady. The faint movement of cloth continues. Everything is calmer, more settled. In some lesser-known reflections, the early morning hours were described as a time of quiet transition, when the demands of the night eased and the activities of the day had not yet fully begun. Whether this experience was universal remains uncertain, though it appears often in accounts of daily life. You consider that gently. A moment between worlds. The baby stirs slightly, then settles again, the warmth holding the layers intact. The mother watches with a calm gaze, her movements slower now, less frequent, though still attentive. She does not stop, she simply softens. You shift your position slightly, feeling how the warmth around you remains, though it now blends with the gentle presence of morning light. The system that carried the baby through the night has done its work. It continues, but with less urgency. Some scholars have explored how the early hours of the day allowed for a gradual easing of vigilance, though the need for care remained constant. The exact experience likely varied, yet the sense of transition is clear. You reflect on that softly. Care never truly ends. It only changes form. The older woman rises slowly, her movements unhurried, her presence still calm. She glances once more at the baby, then at the mother, her expression quiet, satisfied. Her role shifts, but does not disappear. The fire flickers one last time, its glow now faint compared to the growing light. Its warmth remains, though it will soon give way to other sources, other rhythms. It has carried the night, faithfully. The mother leans back slightly, her hand resting near the baby, her awareness steady, her body at ease. The layers hold, the warmth remains, and the room feels balanced in a new way. The night is over, the care continues. You begin to feel a gentle sense of completion, not as an ending, but as a soft transition into something new. The system that protected the baby through the cold has proven itself shaped by knowledge, attention, and quiet persistence. It has held through every moment. Now as the light fills the room more fully, you allow your awareness to soften further, your thoughts, slowing your senses, easing into the calm that follows careful work well done. The fire fades gently, the warmth lingers, the baby sleeps, and you remain within this quiet space carried by the same steady rhythm that has guided everything through the night. You feel the softness of the light, the calm of the air, the quiet presence of warmth that no longer needs to struggle. Everything settles, slowly, gently. You allow your breathing to follow the same steady pattern. Each inhale soft, each exhale longer, as if releasing the last traces of the night. There is nothing left to do, nothing to adjust, nothing to watch, only to rest within the quiet that remains after care has been given. After warmth has been held, after the long winter night has passed. The room is calm, the moment is complete. And as the light continues to grow, you drift gently into that calm carried by the soft rhythm of breath, warmth, and stillness. Sleep well,